What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Human Predator Packmule podcast. I am flying solo from the RV today. Jordan and I had some scheduling conflicts, so I am handling this Q&A podcast by my lonesome. I got two questions we're going to go over today. One has to do with nutrition. Nutritional timing is essentially what the question is based on. And then also whether or not you should track your heart rate during scouting, hiking, things like that, and how you should go about doing it, how you should use those workouts. Two good questions. I'm going to get to both of those. Before we get into them, a couple housekeeping things. If you are on the Human Predator Packmule newsletter, which if you're not, why aren't you? It's fucking killer. I send out 5 emails per week, training tips, training information, hunting stories, all of that kind of stuff. And you can get on it by clicking the link in the show notes and downloading 5 biggest backcountry training mistakes and what to do about them, which is our most popular training guide. You get that totally for free. And it puts you on the newsletter list. And you get everything that I was just telling you about. So if you're on the list already, you know that I've been talking about a hunter's guide to uphill and downhill training, and that I've been working on that, and I'm getting it out to you guys. I'm still in the process of writing it. It's going along pretty well. It's going to cover everything from strength training for uphill and downhill training, or for uphill and downhills, mobility training, conditioning, and then go over some programming basics for it as well. So it's going to be a killer guide. It's going to be really useful for hunters that like to hunt mountains, whether you're hunting sheep or elk or chuckers, any of those kind of things. It's going to be useful to you. And it will be out. My goal is to have it out before turkey season in California, which would be the opening day is March 29th. So I'm working on it and it's coming. Okay. Just want to give you a heads up on that because I know some of you guys have been reaching out and saying, hey, let me know. So it's in works. It's coming. So I got to finish some of the writing, get it edited, get the resource created for it and everything like that. And then I will have it out and ready for purchase. So there's a heads up on that. Let's get into the questions. So first, let me open up the questions so I can read them to you so you know what we're talking about. So first question, can you go over nutrition and how you decide your macros before or after a lift or a run? Okay, and this is a good question because there's a lot of different information out there about pre-workout nutrition, post-workout nutrition, all that kind of stuff. I will say what we do know is the anaerobic window that we were sold, before, about like, if you don't get protein in right away, like you're going to wither away and die and all of this kind of stuff, and you're going to lose all your muscle. And that's not true. So you have several hours after your workout to get in adequate protein and calories to recover from your training session. So that's the first thing I want to touch on. It's not, you don't immediately have to do it. But I'll tell you what I do. So a lot of times I'll do my aerobic sessions, which would be a run, a hike, a ruck, anything like that. Many times I'll do them first thing in the morning, and I'll do them fasted. There is some research. It's not overwhelming. There is some research that says that doing aerobic work, low intensity aerobic work fasted, helps with fat adaptation and makes you more efficient at utilizing fat for fuel. So I take that into consideration lightly. It's not like the overwhelming reason why I train fasted. First, a lot of times in the backcountry or just hunting, you're a little underfed. And so I like to get used to that feeling of being just slightly underfed. The second reason is it helps to moderate intensity, right? So especially right now, when most of my training, most of my conditioning is zone 1 and zone 2. So I do a 75-minute session on Tuesdays, which is like my stimulatory session. It doesn't cost me a whole lot. And then I do a 2-hour plus session on the weekends, which looks like this past weekend I did it. It was a run, walk, hike type deal. I'm staying in zone 2 and down. This coming weekend will be 2.5 hours. I'll work up to 3. And then, over the summer, I'll do 4-hour sessions, all day sessions. We know, quick aside, that the physiological benefit for training stops at about 4 hours of aerobic training, stops at about 4 hours. So you could say there's no need to do more than that. And that's really where we start. It's utilizing fuel, right? That's where the physiological benefit for that kind of stops. But that said, I think there's a psychological benefit and a testing benefit of fueling to go for longer than that. And so I just did a podcast with Bo Martonic of East Meets West Hunt, or East Meets West Outdoors, earlier today, and we talked a little bit about this. That podcast will be coming out in the middle of March. But there is something to going out and going for an all-day hike. First of all, because it's fun and we enjoy it. Second of all, it gets you psychologically prepared for moving all day. And then it also allows you to test out your fueling. If you're going to be in the mountains, like hiking on a multiple day hunt or even a day hunt, you understand what it's like. How much do you need to eat? When do you need to eat? All of that kind of stuff. And that's one of the reasons that, in the off season, the mid off season, I recommend going on some backpacking trips to prepare for hunting season first, again, because they're enjoyable. We like being outside. Why not go for a backpacking trip? You could use it as a scouting trip, but then it also gets you kind of dialed in on like, okay, what does fueling look like all day? What do I need at night to be able to sustain activity the next day? And being in a slightly underfed state, I mean, I guess you could carry enough food that you wouldn't be in a slightly underfed state. But a lot of times when we go out for multiple day hunts, we'll end up in an underfed state. So I think getting used to that is important. So that was a long-winded aside. I often do the aerobic sessions fasted in the morning because it helps me moderate my intensity. If you can go for a long time without really feeling hungry, it's another way to moderate your intensity, because aerobic threshold, which would be the top of your zone 2, is a moving target. So it depends on your recovery. So you could say, you could go and do a cardiac drift test and find out it says that the top of your zone 2 is 148, right? And that's under those conditions. If you have slightly better recovery, it might be 150. Maybe if you have worse recovery, it's 142. It's a moving target. So we kind of play by those averages, right? And figure out where in between these numbers is likely where the top of my zone 2 is. But then utilizing a fasted workout, in my mind, going to the point where you're not feeling like you're famished and you can continue to move, allows you to moderate the intensity that you can be at. So for those kind of sessions, you should be able to go out and move for hours, not really feel like you need to eat anything. That's not to say that you shouldn't. Jordan and I talked in the last podcast about like doing some fueling stuff on your long duration workouts, but you should move at a pace where you feel like you don't really need to eat. And that's how you know that you're kind of staying in that zone 1, zone 2 format, or heart rate zone format. What the hell am I talking about? Anyway, so I wanted to bring that up. So oftentimes I'll do those workouts fasted because of aerobic threshold being a moving target. Other times, I mean, let's say if I'm lifting, I'll have a well-balanced meal a couple hours before a lift, and then that's really it. I typically lift in the middle of the afternoon. If I lift too late, I have a hard time sleeping. My mornings are typically too busy, or I'm doing other things for me to lift, or I like to do my aerobic training in the morning. So I usually lift in the middle of the afternoon. But again, well-balanced meal. If I'm not going to be able to get another balanced meal in within a few hours, I'll have typically a protein shake and a piece of fruit right after I train, just to make sure that I'm getting some nutrition in and recovery. But I typically plan to be able to have another meal within the first couple hours after training. And that's good enough for recovery. Like, you don't have to get crazy about this. You don't need branched chain amino acids. You don't have to have a protein shake immediately after you train. It can be helpful, and I'll talk about a scenario during which it is helpful, but another well-balanced meal within the next couple hours is going to be fine. That's protein, carbs, and fat, everything, like just a meal, like a good serving of protein, lean protein, a good serving of fat, whatever you choose, some vegetables, a starch, and you're golden, right? Now, there's one scenario during which I worry about post-workout nutrition, and I make sure that I have protein and carbs immediately after a workout, and that is if I'm going to do doubles. So I want to start the recovery process as quickly as possible. So some level of protein signaling. It doesn't even have to be a ton. It can be like 25 grams. And then usually a piece of fruit or something like that, or some oatmeal. I will do that after if I'm going to do a double, because I want the protein signaling to start recovery and I want the carbs to help recovery, but also with hydration. And so I will do that after a morning workout. If I'm going to do doubles. And I will often repeat that later in the day after that second double, just to make sure that I'm kind of balanced. But oftentimes I will typically just have a meal after that second workout. One time that I do have carbs before I train aerobically in the morning is I'll have like some oatmeal or something if I'm going to run a little bit harder. So if I have like a lactate threshold run or lactate threshold workout, however I choose to do that, I will have some oatmeal or something before I go, because I'm going to be utilizing carbs. My heart rate's going to get up to the point where I'll be using that for fuel more than I will be fat. And so I'll put something in my stomach for those kind of workouts. And yeah, so that's when I'll do that. And then again, if it's going to be a double, I'll come home, have some protein, have some more carbohydrates, and then start going on about my day. So those are the scenarios under which I'll do that. But really, I don't overcomplicate this, and I don't think we really need to. I think if we're eating balanced meals throughout the day, we're just fine, So especially if you bookend them a couple hours before a workout and a couple hours after a workout, you'll be just fine as long as you're eating adequate protein and you're balancing everything out from a vegetable fat and starch perspective. So I hope that answers your question. That's what I do, and it works well for me. Everybody's a little bit different. You have to experiment. Some people don't tolerate different things in their stomach, especially when they're working out. And I know I have friends that lift fasted and they do well. I don't like to lift fasted because I feel like my blood sugar gets kind of wonky, or I just don't have the same level of intensity. I like to have something. I like to have eaten if I'm going to lift. But my business partner Chris in my gym, he lifts fasted. He lifts fasted all the time. I think Jordan, my assistant coach here in Human Predator Packmule, he lifts fasted pretty regularly. Doesn't work for me. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to figure out for yourself. But I typically shoot for somewhere between around like 40 grams of protein at those meals, right around there, 40 to 50. I don't know. I don't remember exactly where absorption kind of stops and you don't utilize all of the protein. I don't remember those numbers off the top of my head, but I shoot for 40 to 50 grams somewhere in there in those meals. So, except for that, like I said, that post-workout protein shake, oftentimes I just want some protein signaling. So I do like 25 grams and like a banana or something like that. That's typically plenty. So, all right. I'm pretty sure that's all I have to say about that question. I hope that answers your question. If you have follow-ups, hit me up, send a DM on Instagram or comment on this wherever you're watching or listening it, and or shoot me an email. I think you have my email. And I'd be happy to talk more about this. So now the next question, this one is about tracking your heart rate. So thoughts on tracking heart rate when scouting or hiking in non-training specific context. Is it more beneficial to go game speed like you would hunting, since you're simulating an environment, or to go slow a bit and try to stay in zone 2? Well, there's a couple things here. First of all, it depends on the time of year. So like right now, I would say slow down because our main goal is to develop our aerobic capacity in zone 1 and zone 2. And so we don't want to get too far out of that. We want to make sure our average heart rate stays down and we don't really peak up into zone 3 or anything like that all that often. Sometimes you can't help it. Typically you can, but moving at a pace that allows you to stay in the correct heart rate zone. So right now I would say definitely stay in zone 1, stay in zone 2 as you're going out and scouting and hiking. I think using scouting as your workout is a fantastic idea. That's something else that Bo and I talked about this morning. In that podcast, one of the things he does. Bo is an incredible whitetail hunter, and he does a lot of scouting this time of year, a lot of shed hunting. And so hitting those workouts as like a double whammy of like, you get to go scout and shed hunt while you also get your zone 1 and zone 2 work in, is great. I think that's a really, really good idea. So I think you should track that. Again, that's great for your long workouts. Like we have a 90-minute plus workout on Saturdays right now. And I love it that's how Bo utilizes it when he goes and does that. So I do it sometimes here on the farm too, or the ranch, looking around for mule deer stuff. Mule deer haven't dropped their antlers here yet. So I just saw a little buck the other day. He's still rolling around with his, but going around looking at what's going on the ranch, seeing where the turkeys are, seeing what they're doing. kind of scouting for deer, seeing where they're using things this time of year. I kind of do that too. But so I think it's a very good idea, but I do recommend staying there this time of year. Now, as the summer goes on, we do a long workout that's just like a sustainable pace. So don't worry about your heart rate. Move at a sustainable pace that might feel like what you might do when you're on a hunt, whether you're hiking in or whatever it might be, which probably doesn't jack your heart rate up too much, but we just don't worry about it. We use those workouts during the summer. We kind of take the gloves off and say, just go, fuel yourself appropriately, move at a sustainable pace. Don't worry too much about your heart rate, because at that time of the year, we've built the resources we need, first of all, to keep our heart rate down when we need to. And second of all, to adapt to that and have it not take too much from us. Because by the time we get into that point in the summer and the preseason, we've done a huge aerobic capacity block. We've also done an aerobic power block. So we've built both ends of the spectrum. If you've ever heard me talk about the conditioning house is the foundation. The lowest part of the basement is your resting heart rate. We want to get that as low as possible. Ceiling of the first floor is your aerobic threshold. We want to get that as high as possible. And then our second ceiling, the ceiling of the second floor, is your anaerobic threshold, and we want to get that as high as possible. And so by that point, of course, working year round and consistently working year round has also helped. But by that point, we have a pretty good conditioning house. And so we're able to, not only if we get up into zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, we're able to recover because we've built a recovery system, and we're able to repeat that from day after day. So I don't worry too much about it at that point of the year. And it gets a little bit more specific to hunting. Now, when you say game speed, I don't know. It depends on how you hunt. And I think a lot of times, you don't have to move very fast unless you're in a situation that you have to get somewhere right away. But when you're hiking in or hiking out or anything like that, you can move at a sustainable pace. And there's no need to rush, I think. Now listen, if you're chucker hunting, sometimes, some of those gnarly ass hills, you're going to move at a good clip up of them, take a break, and then go after it. But then, let's say your dog's on point and you got to get after him. You got to hustle, right? You got to have the gas to get there. So that would be kind of a game speed situation, I guess. But I don't really know what it would be for a game speed kind of situation when it comes to hunt, because you don't really have to move fast, especially in a big game situation, right? You got your hike, sit in glass, you got your stalk. Now, your stalk might be broken up into different sections depending on how far away they are. You might have to hustle, but then as soon as you hustle, you get to the point where you have to be quiet and you have to move slower, and you get your heart rate down so you can get into a good shooting position and actually have control of yourself to shoot. So I guess to answer your question from a game speed thing is just that would be our summer strategy, where we just move at a sustainable pace. We don't worry too much about heart rate. We break as we need to. We push ourselves a little bit as we need to on the uphills and stuff like that to improve that measure of fitness. But like I said, by that point in the year, we've done a ton of aerobic capacity work, and we've also done aerobic power work to make sure that we have the resources to kind of keep our heart rate down as we push a little bit harder. And we also have the recovery system built so that it doesn't tax us too much. But I really think that's the answer. It depends. Game speed depends on how you hunt. I know there's guys that run up hills after bears to get out in front of them and stuff like that. But I think that's still a specific thing that wouldn't necessarily wouldn't necessarily line up with the whole scouting kind of thing and moving into game speed. So even if you're still hunting, right? You're not going to move very fast. I don't think we need to move all that fast off when we're hunting, because we miss things. Even on the hike in, I think we should give ourselves enough time to move slowly and pay attention. And then if you have to run and get to a place, that's why we've done the aerobic power work. So you can get out in front of something or do a fast part of a stalk, settle yourself, recover, and get after it. So I would say for the most part, I wouldn't right now, this time of year, keep your intensity down as you scout and everything like that. Yes, there is a psycho-environmental connection to how you utilize energy in different environments. That was part of the question because it simulates it. But I would work mostly on aerobic capacity right now, and then in the summer, kind of take the gloves off a little bit and just move at your fastest sustainable pace without crushing yourself taking breaks as you need to. So I believe that answers both of the questions. Again, the Hunter's Guide to Uphill and Downhill Training, coming before turkey season in California. I'll have that out, so I appreciate you guys keep following up on that. Again, if you're not already on our newsletter list, which you should be, but if you're not, 5 emails per week. And to get on it, you get our most popular guide, 100% free, 5 biggest backcountry training mistakes and what to do about them. It'll walk you through rucking, strength training, mental skills, all kinds of killer stuff that'll help set you up for hunting season. Even if you don't sign up to train with us, that resource is killer, and it's going to help you prepare for this season and every season afterwards. So I hope no matter what, you sign up for the mailing list, get a bunch of killer stuff from our newsletter, and also get the 5 biggest backcountry training mistakes. That is all I have for you for this episode. I appreciate you tuning in, listening, and if you're watching me sit here in my RV and record this for you. And I hope you have a good one, and we will be back with a new episode soon.